The forest waits for no one, and yet it always seems to be waiting. You step softly into it, not with your feet, but with your breath, your senses, your slowing thoughts. The trees stand still, but their stillness is not silence. It is presence. It is patience. It is memory folded into bark and shadow. You settle into this hush as though your mind were made of leaves. A cool quiet surrounds you. And in that stillness, something begins to stir, not motion exactly, but awareness. You feel the texture of the moment thickening, deepening, like loam beneath your thoughts. Beneath the bark, beneath what you see, the story of the tree begins. Imagine the surface of a tree, rough, patterned, touched by wind and sun. But beneath that, beneath even the layer of life that forms the bark, there is a deeper rhythm. Cambium, the thin living ring that grows inward and outward each year, hums quietly with a kind of listening. It is not the listening of ears or of language, but of sensation. Moisture, light, cold, gravity. The tree is always paying attention not just to the now, but to how the now echoes the past. And you are learning to listen too. Trees do not rush. They do not move to the ticking of seconds or the blink of a clock. Their time is slower, widened. A breath that takes weeks. A heartbeat that lasts a season. In the stillness beneath their bark, there is a different kind of memory, not the memory of moments, but of patterns. The repetition of sun angles, the timing of rains, the hush before a frost. You feel your own body slow to match it. Your breathing falls into rhythm with the imagined breath of a beech or a spruce. You are not moving, and neither are they. Yet something inside both of you is always shifting, noticing, preparing. In the winter months, trees enter a kind of sleep. But it is not the sleep of forgetting, it is the sleep of keeping. Inside each trunk, tiny buds are quietly storing light that has already passed. Sugars made from last year's sun are tucked away in roots and twigs carefully rationed. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is hurried. And that stillness, that apparent quiet, is filled with the memory of warmth, the trace of summer in every cell. You think of your own body now. How it too keeps memories in places you rarely notice, in muscles, in breath, in the quiet twitch behind your eyes as you fall asleep. You, like the tree, carry what has passed forward. You remember not just with your mind, but with your being. Consider how a tree knows when to change. Not because of a single cold night, but because of the deepening length of darkness. Each nightfall builds a layer of understanding. Each morning confirms or revises. This is how the tree knows it is autumn. Not from one sign, but from the conversation of many small messages. Inside the tree's cells, light-sensitive proteins begin to shift. They measure not brightness, but duration. These are called photoreceptors, not unlike the ones in your eyes, but with a slower purpose. They are the messengers of seasonal memory. They are the ones who whisper, it's time to stop growing. It's time to sleep. Later, they'll say, it's time to wake. And just like that, what seemed like stillness becomes full of quiet voices. You return to the outer bark for a moment. Touch it in your imagination. It is rough, flaking, textured like old hands. Beneath it, there is water, sugar, chemistry, memory. You wonder how much you can learn just by being still. By holding still long enough to feel the shape of time passing through you. Stillness is not the absence of activity. It is the presence of attention. And in this kind of stillness, trees become extraordinary listeners. They read the air, the light, the soil. They store these readings like a journal without ink. And unlike humans, they do not forget on purpose. They do not overwrite memories with stories. Their stories are etched into their form, into every ring, every scar, every twist of trunk toward the sun. You imagine yourself as a young sapling, just beginning. Your mind is softwood, open to shape. Over years, you stretch toward light, bend with wind, sink your thoughts into deep roots. And slowly, you become something sturdy, something still. But you are never just the moment you are in. You are everything you have ever stored. Perhaps this is what trees teach best, not how to change, but how to hold. A tree holds the memory of the drought, but does not fear it. A tree remembers the late frost, but does not brace against it. Instead, it adjusts. It shifts in shape, in chemistry, in subtle ways you can't always see. The stillness is not denial. It is readiness. And as you breathe in again, slower now, deeper, you feel your own kind of readiness. The forest around you is not asleep. It is holding its breath. It is listening to time in a voice that sounds nothing like ticking. You rest with it. And somewhere deep beneath the bark, in that narrow ring between wood and world, the memory of a million dawns lies waiting. Not written, but known. Not recited, but remembered in rhythm, in warmth, in patience. Now, as your thoughts begin to float gently outward, you start to wonder if time can be felt without counting. What kind of clock lives inside the stillness of a tree? And how, without ever moving, it always seems to know when everything is about to begin. There is a kind of time that doesn't tick. It doesn't live in calendars or wristwatches. It does not sound like seconds, nor is it shaped like numbers. This kind of time is older, softer. It passes not with urgency, but with rhythm. A pulse that moves through sunlight, through shadow, through the length of a breeze. You rest inside this other kind of time now, the time of trees. Unlike the time that governs your phone, your meetings, your sleep schedule, the tree's time is not divided into sharp segments. It is not measured. It is felt. A day to the tree is not a single revolution. It is a slow shift in light, a difference in warmth, a change in the angle of the sun. What the tree knows is not hours but seasons. Not seconds but cycles. And so, it tells time in a language without hands. You imagine a great oak, rooted for hundreds of years. It has never owned a clock, but it has always known when to bloom. Each spring, it opens its leaves at just the right moment. Not early, not late. Each autumn, it lets go with the same trust. You wonder, how? The answer is light, but not in the way your eyes know it. The tree feels light through photoreceptors buried deep within its cells. These receptors do not see light, they measure it. They count the length of daylight, the fading warmth, the quality of the sun. This is called photoperiodism, the biological response to the changing lengths of night and day. You might think of photoperiodism as the tree's inner clock, a timekeeper that doesn't tick but sways. Every morning and evening adds to its record. It doesn't ask, what time is it now? It asks, how has the light changed? You let that idea settle in your body. What would it feel like to keep time that way? Not by alarms or deadlines, but by noticing the world change around you? To live with a clock made of sunrises? Inside each tree, these light-sensitive cells trigger cascades of change. As daylight shortens, a switch is flipped, prepare for winter. The tree begins to withdraw nutrients from its leaves, storing them deep in its trunk and roots. When daylight grows again, another switch flips, it's time to grow. But the light is not the only timekeeper. Temperature, too, plays a quiet role. Trees keep a kind of thermal memory, a record of how long it has been cold. Not just how cold, but for how many days, how many nights. This slow counting of chill is called vernalization, a cooling period required before certain species will bloom. The cold is not a signal to stop, it is a signal to rest, to prepare. And so the tree's internal clock is not a single mechanism. It is a symphony of cues: light, warmth, moisture, time. Each season composes its melody differently, and the tree listens, responding not in haste, but in harmony. This harmony doesn't break when storms come or when the days are strange. It bends. Trees do not panic in the face of time's unpredictability. They absorb it, adapt, wait. They know the rhythm will return even if the tempo changes. You might feel your own life sometimes lacks this rhythm. That your days blur, too quick, too full. But inside you too is a biological clock. In fact, many clocks. Your body keeps time in cycles, circadian rhythms that follow the light of day. These rhythms control your sleep, your hunger, your temperature. They drift gently through the hours, syncing to cues around you: morning light, evening quiet, meal times, movement. Like the tree, your body listens. And, like the tree, your rhythms can be disrupted by artificial time, screens, alarms, late-night lights. But the natural rhythms remain, waiting quietly beneath the surface. Sometimes, when you walk in the early morning or sit in dusk's soft light, your inner timekeeper feels a flicker of recognition. A moment of quiet alignment with something much older than clocks. You wonder now about your own form of photoperiodism, how the length of day changes your energy, your mood, your sleep. You feel that subtle slowing in autumn, that fresh hum in spring. The tree and your body are not so different. Both respond to the sun. Both adapt to the cold. Both carry the memory of yesterday and how they move today. And maybe, just maybe, both are trying to return to a more natural rhythm. So you stay still a little longer, imagining yourself as a tree. You feel the light, not as brightness, but as invitation. You count the warmth, not with numbers, but with sensation. You respond, not in words, but in quiet choices. Rest more, reach less, soften. The forest around you hums with time. Not racing, not rushing. Just moving gently like a tide of green and gold. Every tree is part of this slow conversation, one that has no beginning, no end. Only return. And as your breath slows again, you think. If you lived by light, and measured days by feeling, what else might your roots begin to understand? Perhaps it is time now to follow those roots, to sink below the surface, and see what remembers the seasons first. You've followed the light. You've listened to the ticking silence of sun and shadow. Now it's time to go deeper. Downward, inward, into the soil. Beneath the forest floor, where sound softens and light dissolves, tree roots stretch in every direction. You follow them gently, imagining your body as a thread of slow-growing wood. There is no hurry here, only seeking, only sensing. Roots are not blind. They are aware not with sight, but with touch, chemistry, and patience. They read the world through moisture, mineral, temperature, and vibration. Each inch they grow, they taste and remember. As you sink into this earthy stillness, the air cools. The soil hugs close. This is where the tree listens to the weather before it arrives. You see, roots are more than anchors. They are receptors, interpreters, timekeepers in their own language. When rain comes, roots don't just drink, they record. They note the mineral content of the water, the speed of its arrival, the depth to which it sinks. They know the difference between the sharp, cold pulse of spring snowmelt and the gentle, soaking sigh of autumn rain. And they respond accordingly. After a long winter, when the topsoil begins to thaw, water trickles downward, carrying signals from the surface. Roots begin to swell in response. Not growing yet, just waking, testing, sensing the change. Some roots carry specialized cells, tiny sensors attuned to the balance of water and air in the soil. When the levels shift, those cells trigger hormones. These chemical messengers travel upward through the tree's vascular system like notes passed from the underground to the sky. The roots have read the signs. And now, the tree can remember the season has begun to change. You pause there with this thought. That weather isn't only felt in your skin or seen in the sky, it is also read below. Long before leaves unfurl, long before birds return. The earth speaks to its roots, and the roots respond. But how do they know what to expect? Because memory for the tree lives in more than its rings. It lives in behavior, in the ways roots change after certain conditions. If one year brings flood, the roots will not forget. They may grow differently the next, steering away from water-saturated zones. If drought visits, the roots grow deeper, longer, wiser. This is called phenotypic plasticity, a tree's ability to adjust how it grows in response to its experiences. It's not memory the way you recall a dream, but memory is change. Last year's hardship written into this year's form. You might know that feeling too. You've grown differently after certain seasons in your life, after the hard years, after the soft ones. Your body remembers stress, rest, healing. You adapt even without thinking. Like roots do. Now, imagine again the root tip, small, sensitive, navigating darkness. It sends out fine root hairs, searching for nutrients, exploring. Each choice it makes, each turn or pause, reflects what it has learned from the soil. The future is not predicted exactly, but prepared for. You rest in that idea for a moment. That preparation can be quiet. That response can be subtle. That the body, your body, like the root, may know how to adapt before your mind even understands why. Trees also share signals through their roots. Through networks of fungal threads called mycorrhizae, trees connect and communicate beneath the surface. These fungi extend the reach of roots, but also act like messengers carrying nutrients and information from one tree to another. If one tree senses drought, its roots, with the help of the fungal web, may send warning signals to nearby trees. Prepare. Save water. Delay growth. Rest. So even beneath the soil, time is not kept alone. There is memory here, yes, but also community. A shared sense of seasons. You imagine yourself lying in a forest now, your back against the earth. Beneath you, millions of signals move unseen. Moisture, minerals, messages. The world is not quiet, only covered. And as you breathe in, slowly, deeply, you begin to wonder what it would feel like. To be part of such a knowing. To be so rooted in place, yet so wise about change. Because that's what roots do. They reach not in haste, but in trust. And maybe, just maybe, the next message is already moving upward. Slowly rising from the dark. To become something green. You return now from the dark of the soil. Upward. Slowly. Your thoughts rise like sap in spring, patient, clear, inevitable. And as you surface into light once more, you find yourself beneath a canopy of leaves. They move gently above you, whispering in patterns you almost understand. Every leaf is a message. And each one begins as a promise. You imagine the earliest leaves, tender, green, newborn. Their surface delicate as skin. They open to the sun with such trust. Each leaf a solar panel, yes, but also a page, a letter, a line in a larger story. A leaf is not permanent. It lives and it lets go. But in its short span, it does something profound. It translates light into life. This process, soft and steady, is photosynthesis. You may know the term, but here, in this quiet place, you feel its rhythm instead. The leaf takes in light, not the way your eyes do, but deeper. It absorbs photons, tiny packages of energy, and uses them to rearrange molecules of water and carbon dioxide. From this, the tree creates sugar, nourishment, fuel, and as a gentle breath, it releases oxygen. A gift into the air, invisible but essential. You breathe in, You breathe out, and you realize you've been part of this exchange all your life. Each leaf performs this task over and over all season long. But it is not only a worker, it is also a sensor. Leaves respond to changes in the air, in light, in moisture. They adjust their shape, their angle, their openings, tiny pores called stomata, to control how much air and water they trade. In this way, a leaf is always speaking. To the sun, to the sky, to the rest of the tree. You lie there, watching the breeze lift one branch, then another. The whole canopy seems to shimmer with soft conversation. This is not speech the way you know it. It is communication made of gesture, color, and chemistry. When a tree begins to sense that summer is ending, it changes the language of its leaves. It begins to speak in golds, in oranges, in reds. Why do leaves change color? Because they are letting go. And in that letting go, something is revealed. During most of the growing season, a pigment called chlorophyll gives leaves their green color. Chlorophyll is essential, it captures sunlight. But as the days shorten, the tree begins to break it down, withdrawing nutrients from each leaf. As the green fades, other pigments, carotenoids, anthocyanins, emerge. These have always been there, hidden beneath the green. You may think of fall as a moment of dying, but it is also a moment of honesty. The tree stops creating. It begins revealing. Each red and gold leaf is a quiet unveiling. A message not just of ending, but of completion. You imagine that each color has a voice. Golden leaves hum like warm violins. Red ones speak with soft resolve. Brown ones crackle with finality. And when they fall, what are they saying? Perhaps, I've done my part. Now I return. But the message is not just for you. As leaves break down, they become food for fungi, insects, and the soil itself. They release stored minerals back to the roots below. In falling, they begin again. This is not death. It is contribution. You wonder what you shed when your own seasons shift. What do you release? What parts of you return to nourish what comes next? Just as the leaf sends sugars to the trunk before it lets go, you too carry your lessons inward, quietly preparing for winter. And there's more. Leaves can also speak in chemicals. Tiny scent molecules released when damaged or eaten. These signals warn nearby leaves or neighboring trees. A pest is near. Prepare. Defend. The tree, in its quiet way, is not isolated. It is alert. Even the smallest flutter of a leaf carries meaning. You begin to feel it now. The canopy is not just shade. It is story. It is memory written in green ink that fades into firelight. And still, you rest there, listening, watching. If the bark holds time, and the roots hold preparation, then the leaves, they hold the tree's present tense. They respond now. They shift now. They teach the tree what the world is doing now. And in a few weeks or months, they will fall. Not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. Because letting go, at the right time, is its own form of remembering. The leaves above you shimmer once more, and then still. You feel something soft stir inside you. A recognition, not of words, but of rhythm. And just before your thoughts drift further, you begin to wonder, if a leaf can speak so clearly without a voice, what might the heart would say? In the silence of its rings? Some memories are visible only in cross-section. Not in motion, but in shape. Not in words, but in wood. You find yourself standing beside a fallen tree now, its trunk resting like a long, quiet sentence. The end is open, cleanly cut, exposing a record of years. You look into the center and see them, the rings, thin ones, wide ones, pale and dark, a slow spiral of time, curling outward from the heart. This is not just wood, it is memory. Each ring marks a single year of the tree's life, a circle added as the tree grows outward. Each one holds a story. The wider rings speak of warm seasons, gentle rains, open skies. They show a year when water was plentiful, when light was steady, when the tree could stretch without fear. The narrow rings tell other stories, of droughts, of cold summers, of crowded shade, of years when growth was slow, careful, measured. And the dark lines, the denser wood, they arrive at the end of the growing season, a final punctuation mark before the tree rests again. You trace the spiral with your eyes, ring by ring, like reading an ancient diary. There is no ink here, but the story is written all the same. This practice, the reading of tree rings, has a name, dendrochronology. Scientists use it to understand the past, not just the life of the tree, but the climate it lived in. A tree becomes a witness. It remembers droughts you never knew happened, It recalls fires, storms, insect swarms, sometimes even solar cycles, the rhythms of the sun itself, etched faintly into its flesh. Each tree is its own historian, and together they tell a story much larger than themselves. You wonder now, if your body kept a visible record of the years, what would it show? Would the hard years be narrow and dark, the joyful years wide and bright? Would someone be able to look at you gently and see where you bent, where you broke, and where you healed? Unlike the outer bark, which renews and peels, the inner rings stay. They do not fade. The tree carries all its seasons at once, not in memory that fades, but in memory that forms the very structure of who it is. And so the center, the heartwood, is not dead, though it no longer conducts water. It is a pillar, a record, a stillness that holds everything. There is something comforting in this, that the tree does not forget its hard years, but it does not live in them either. They become part of its strength, support, foundation. You breathe in deeply and feel your own spine as a kind of inner ring, supporting you, holding what has passed. Trees do not shrink from past seasons. They grow around them. You feel this idea settle into your chest, that growth is not forgetting. It is including. Now and then you might see a scar in the rings, a dark knot, a distortion, perhaps a branch that was lost, or a wound from wind or lightning. But even these are circled over year after year, held safely within the tree's core. The tree does not erase what hurt, surrounds it, stabilizes it, lives with it, and you, perhaps you can do the same. You sit beside the old trunk a while longer, running your hand along the rings in your mind, feeling not time lost, but time kept. In a world that moves so fast, trees offer a different way to remember, not by holding on to moments, but by becoming the memory itself. You wonder now what the newest ring will look like, the one still forming, this very season. It is being written in silence, just beneath the bark, and the tree does not rush it, just as your next moment need not be rushed either. You breathe once more. The spiral continues outward, but before your thoughts drift too far, a quiet question stirs. What happens when even the memory goes still? When growth pauses, and the world is blanketed in cold? What does a tree know? In the waiting white of winter? Now the world grows quiet. The air sharpens, the sky turns pale, and snow begins to soften everything it touches. You stand in the hush of winter, and everything holds its breath. To your eyes, the forest sleeps, branches bare, ground frozen, life hidden or gone. But the trees, they are not sleeping in the way you do. They are not unconscious. They are dormant. This is a different kind of stillness. You close your eyes and feel it. A silence so deep it vibrates. A pause that is not absence, but preparation. Beneath the frost-crusted bark, beneath the ice-laced soil, the tree is alive, slowed, softened, aware. It has entered dormancy, a state of suspended animation, where energy is conserved. Growth is paused, and listening continues. You might think of it as a long exhale, the final note of a season, held gently before the next breath begins. During dormancy, a tree's metabolism slows dramatically. Its cells reduce activity. Water within the tree is drawn inward, concentrated deep in the core, to prevent freezing damage. This inward pull is survival. A drawing in, not of fear, but of wisdom. The tree lets go of what it doesn't need, and shelters what matters most. And in that gesture, you feel something familiar. How often do you too need a season of inwardness? A time to pause, to store away energy, to not bloom? You imagine yourself now, becoming dormant with the tree. Your thoughts settle. Your limbs relax. The cold becomes not biting, but stilling. And around you, the forest does not vanish. It deepens. Even snow, which seems to silence, is part of the tree's memory. Snow insulates. A thick blanket of white protects the ground from freezing too deeply. Beneath it, roots remain just warm enough to survive, just soft enough to listen. And the snow carries messages too. Its weight, its melt, its timing. The tree notices it all. Some species even require a long, cold winter to awaken properly. Their internal clocks need the signal of chill hours before buds will open again. This is chilling requirement. the tree's way of knowing. Winter has truly passed. Now we may grow. You wonder now how your own body senses readiness, how it waits for warmth in ways you don't consciously feel. The tree waits without tension. It doesn't force the next season to arrive. It trusts in rhythm, and in its dormancy, the tree continues to prepare not actively but faithfully. Deep inside its tissues, cells are already forming the earliest signs of spring. Bud scales are tight, protecting embryonic leaves and flowers. Sugars stored in the roots remain untouched, ready to rise again when the light returns. This is not a lifeless season. It is a sacred pause, a time of keeping, a time of knowing without doing. And you feel that rhythm in your bones. The desire to rest, not from failure, but from having given so much. Even the tree that seems most still is dreaming in structure, holding the blueprint for green. Even beneath the gray, you breathe slowly now, each inhale like frost, each exhale like melting snow. The forest around you is not frozen in fury. It is frozen in faith, and as you rest alongside it, you begin to wonder if dormancy can be so rich with promise, so full beneath the hush. What awakens the tree first? What shape does hope take? Just before it appears? Spring does not begin with a bloom. It begins with a whisper. Before petals open, before green returns, there is a small stirring. Not outside, but deep within. You imagine yourself now inside a bud, tightly wrapped, folded, waiting. The outer layers feel dry and still, but within, everything is already becoming. Buds form long before they open, in late summer or early fall. Even as leaves begin to drop, tiny blueprints are sealed inside. Each bud is a promise and pause, a pre-written spring, wrapped in layers of sleep. You picture this now. A future flower, a folded leaf, tucked safely beneath dark scales, riding out the frost. And then, slowly, something changes. Not all at once, not loudly. The tree begins to sense it. Light lengthens, temperatures climb, subtly at first, but enough for the bud to notice. This noticing is chemical. A shift in hormones, one in particular, gibberellin, plays a leading role. It builds quietly, nudging cells to stretch, to soften the tissues that hold stillness in place. It doesn't push, it invites. You feel that inside yourself, the difference between being forced awake and being invited to rise. As light and warmth increase, water begins to flow again. The tree draws from its roots, those sugars stored all winter, now rising through capillaries like slow breath. This upward movement is called sap flow, and it marks the tree's re-entry into active life. You think of it as a thaw inside your own chest, that moment when something tight begins to loosen, when the world begins to feel possible again. But it is not just physics or warmth that causes a bud to break. It is timing, carefully chosen by memory. The tree recalls late frosts. It remembers years when warmth came early, but left too soon. So it waits just long enough. Not too early, not too late. Each species times its bloom to what it has learned, through evolution and experience, a balance between risk and readiness. And when it finally opens, not with sound but with shape, a new season begins. You imagine a bud unfolding, slowly like fingers uncurled in sleep. Inside, a leaf already formed, or a flower delicate as breath. The shape of spring was never a sudden invention. It was held in waiting all along. And you know that shape too. The way an idea waits, the way healing gathers, in unseen places. Even when nothing appears to change, transformation is preparing. You walk beneath branches now, seeing the first hints of green. Tiny bursts barely there, but you feel them. The quiet architecture of return. Each tree unfolds according to its inner rhythm. Not all at once, but in waves. Some early brave, some cautious slow. Together they paint a season. And you standing there, feel yourself unfold a little too. There is a kind of courage in opening, in stepping into light. After a long sleep, the shape of spring, you realize, is not just what you see. It's what the world begins to trust again. A cycle remembered, a rhythm resumed, a story continued, and just before the forest bursts fully into bloom, you wonder if spring can arrive, in silence and memory and breath. How does a tree know where the light is before it sees it? Light returns quietly in spring, not as an announcement, but as a rising rhythm. Earlier dawns, longer dusks. Notice not in your mind, but in your body, and in the body of the tree. A tree does not have eyes. It does not watch the sky, but it feels light. not as image, but as instruction. This is where you begin tonight, in the language of light. Not light as brightness, but light as signal. Each cell in the tree, though unseen, is sensitive to the changing quality of light. Within them are special proteins, called photoreceptors, molecular listeners that respond to specific wavelengths. Some, like phytochromes, are tuned to red and far-red light. Others, like cryptochromes, sense blue, and still others detect ultraviolet or shifts in shade. These photoreceptors don't form pictures. They form responses. They tell the tree when it's time to grow, when to stretch a shoot, when to thicken a stem, when to open or close a flower. You imagine them now, not as switches, but as whispers, soft agreements between light and leaf. As daylight increases in spring, these receptors collect information. They tally the duration of brightness, the angle of the sun, the quality of photons in the air, and then a decision. Inside the buds and stems, genes awaken, proteins assemble, growth begins. And yet, the tree does not rush. It remembers last year's light, remembers the frost that followed early warmth, remembers the rhythms that favored survival. Its receptors adjust, responding not only to the now, but to the pattern. You feel that too, don't you? The way your own body shifts. With the return of the sun, humans also have photoreceptors, not just in the eyes, but deep in the brain. The suprachiasmatic nucleus, your internal clock, resets itself daily through light. This is your circadian rhythm, a 24-hour flow, tuned by sunrise and sunset. Morning light wakes your cortisol. Evening dimness nudges melatonin. Your sleep, your alertness, your mood, all gently shaped by light's return. You are more tree-like than you realized. And perhaps light is not just something to see, but something to receive. Trees use light to measure season, to tell time, to know place, but they also use it for something more intimate. Energy. Through photosynthesis, light becomes sugar. Photons strike chlorophyll. Electrons move. Water splits. Oxygen releases. What sounds like chemistry feels like magic. You imagine this as light becoming leaf, as sunlight woven into wood, as sky stored inside bark. Each time you walk in a forest, you are walking inside light. That became matter. And in that matter, a memory of the very sun that touched the canopy months ago. In winter, the tree stores that light as sugars in its roots. It holds the sun beneath the snow. And when spring comes, the returning light isn't just a signal. It's a reunion. Light says, you may grow again. And the tree listens, not by watching, but by unfolding. You too unfold differently in the light. Your energy shifts, not by choice, but by response. A warm morning lifts your pace. A golden evening calms your thoughts. A long stretch of sun after winter feels like memory returned. Because it is. Light returns not only to the world, it returns to you. And sometimes, the very light you need is not new, but remembered. You breathe in that thought. That memory is not always a picture, not always a story. Sometimes it is a feeling in your skin, a softness in your step, a sense that something has shifted in the angle of the world. And you wonder, what else in your life has responded to light without you knowing? What parts of you opened quietly? When the right warmth arrived, the tree never questions the sun's return. It trusts it, it receives it, and from that trust comes life. Perhaps even in darkness, there is something within you, waiting for the right light, not to see, but to become. And just as this chapter closes, a question rises like dawn. If light is a message, carried without words, what do the winds carry between the trees? When the leaves begin to speak, there is a breeze tonight, soft, wandering. It brushes against the leaves, rustling not just branches, but messages. You sit in a quiet grove now. Your back to a tree, your thoughts light as pollen, and above you, beside you, around you, a network speaks, not in sounds, not in words, but in molecules, in sense too subtle to name, in chemistry that carries meaning. Trees, you've learned, do not speak aloud, but they are not silent. They converse in chemicals, volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, tiny airborne messengers, carried by the wind. These compounds are released when a leaf is damaged, when a pest begins to feed, when a season shifts, and nearby trees detect them. Through their own leaves, through pores that feel more than air. What do they say? Some say, danger is near. Others whisper, prepare your defenses. And some even suggest, grow a little slower this week. Each message depends on the moment, and each tree listens differently. You rest in that idea that the forest is full of conversation, even if you can't hear it. This form of chemical communication is a kind of memory in motion, a way for trees to not only remember their own experiences, but to share them. One tree's hardship becomes another's preparation. This exchange is not loud, not instant, but it is real. In studies, scientists have found that trees attacked by insects release VOCs that nearby trees can detect. Those neighbors, in turn, begin to produce more tannins, bitter compounds that make their leaves harder to eat. It's as though the tree has warned its kin. I've seen this before. Get ready. You might think of it as a forest immune system. Distributed, adaptive, woven through scent. But this communication is not limited to air. Below ground, another conversation hums. Even quieter, even older. Beneath the soil, fungal networks stretch like threads, connecting tree to tree. In what some call the wood wide web, these fungi, mycorrhizal networks, form partnerships with roots. They trade nutrients, phosphorus, nitrogen, carbon, and through these same connections, messages travel, warnings, instructions, perhaps even favor. Mother trees, older and taller, have been shown to send sugars to shaded saplings nearby. Support given, not randomly, but intentionally. You let that settle in your mind, that trees do not grow alone, but in quiet coordination. That memory might live, not just in rings, but in relationships. And you wonder, what is it like to trust that deeply? To be rooted beside another being, and know that when you struggle, they will feel it too? You think now of the way certain trees drop their leaves early, in drought years, not to preserve themselves alone, but to conserve water for the whole grove. This is not self-sacrifice. It is shared wisdom, a memory made visible, in action. And perhaps you too have felt that kind of invisible tether to those you care for, to those whose well-being shapes your own. The forest is not just a collection of trees. It is a memory made of many minds, a distributed awareness, an ecosystem of mutual remembrance. And in this way, trees teach not only how to endure, but how to belong. You breathe this in, not just oxygen, but the thought that even the air carries knowledge, invisible trails of story, passed from leaf to leaf, branch to branch. The wind rustles again. You close your eyes. Perhaps it carries warnings, or welcomes, or simply the scent of a change in season. Whatever it brings, the trees will know, and they will respond, not in panic, but in pattern. You wonder now, if trees can share memory across distance, through roots and wind and fungi, then where does one tree's story end, and the forests begin? You return now, to the beginning, to the stillness beneath the trees, to the hush that is no longer empty, but full of stories, of memory, of breath slowed into understanding. You lie in the forest once more, but something has changed. Not the trees, not the wind, not the shape of the light. You've been walking through the life of a tree, through the silence of roots, the conversation of leaves, the rhythms of dormancy, the returning warmth of light. And now, you feel it in your own body, the slow spiral shape of time. Time that does not rush, time that does not forget, time that grows. A forest is not made in a day. It is built in layers, cell by cell, ring by ring, season by patient season. And you are no different. You remember the way the bark holds stillness, how the cambium listens in silence. You remember how a bud waits, how the roots adapt, how the light returns as signal, not just shine. And now, you see it all together, not pieces, not parts, but a single whole. A tree is not only itself. It is the air, the soil, the past, the forest. It is everything it has ever known, everything it has endured, everything it is becoming. You feel that idea rest gently on your chest, like sunlight filtered through leaves. Perhaps you too are not just yourself. You are your memories, your seasons, your scars and growth rings. You are your light, and the shade that shaped you. You are the stories you keep in your skin, not always visible, but always there. A tree never hurries, and yet it becomes vast. It never moves, yet it reaches. It never forgets, yet it grows anew each spring. And maybe this is the deepest lesson the forest offers. That you can change without losing who you were. That you can hold your hardest years as strength. That you can be still and still belong to movement. You close your eyes now, hearing the slow rhythm of leaves above you. They are not speaking. Not the way people do. But they are saying something. You are part of this. Part of the breath that moves through green. Part of the cycle that holds loss and return. Part of the stillness that is never truly still. And in this final moment, as sleep begins to wrap its roots around you, you wonder if memory is not only what you recall, but what you become. Then maybe, just maybe, you have been growing towards something all along, even now, even here, even in your dreams.